Is that part of why you wanted to start Plural as well? Like, is investing into renewables a much steadier market?
We can just talk about like what renewables are as an asset class. Most of the renewable energy that is produced in the US today is not from rooftop solar. It's from projects.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the BlockHash Podcast. Today, I have a fantastic guest with Adam Silver talking about Plural Energy, a company bringing renewable energy to the blockchain for both crypto natives, traditional capital markets, and diving into what they're doing within that space. Adam, welcome to the show, man. It's a pleasure to have you here. I think we're gonna have a great talk today.
Yeah. No, I'm excited to be here. I've listened to a lot of your episodes and yeah, excited to dig in, get a little nerdy. It should be fun.
Tell me a little bit about yourself. I'm sure people will genuinely be very curious to what your personal story is. Like, how did you wind up not in just the space, but also, with renewables? Like, is there a connection there, a light bulb that went off originally? What's the backstory?
Yeah, no, I think and it's funny, this is the question I prepared for the least. So let's see where it goes. um so I grew up in, a normal upper middle class family in Scottsdale, Arizona, which is very hot. Um and so Arizona was one of the first places to have a lot of solar because of so much sun. And I think though that most of my upbringing, I was kind of torn between like these two poles. My grandparents and parents were both all very involved in the community, and they had like I think very much a ethos of public service and like giving back. But I also have so many entrepreneurs in my family. Like I think almost 10 now across my like aunts, uncles, cousins, parents. My parents are both entrepreneurs. My brother's an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. My wife's an entrepreneur. So there was always this other pull towards pursuing business as well. And so I became, when I was in high school and college, obsessed with this idea of like public entrepreneurship, which is how you can do well and do good at the same time. And that was kind of where this interest in spaces like renewable energy was born. And then I've always been a systems guy too. Like I love systems thinking, even though, I'm not an engineer. I just think that, the world works in systems. And I became obsessed with the system of systems of systems that is the US electric grid and like the miracle that it performs every day when any one of us walks up to a light switch and turns it on and the lights turn on. Like that's amazing. And so I became obsessed with that, and then I became obsessed with how much harder it is to make that miracle come true with renewable energy. And that was really like the birth of what eventually became Plural. Like those were like the seedlings of ideas and interests for me. And it took a lot more years and growth and personal experience to get to the point where I could start a company that was focused on that space. And then, of course, took discovering the magic of the blockchain and smart contracts. But ultimately, like those were really the seedlings of what became, this company that I'm so proud of.
Yeah, when you say public entrepreneurship, is that something that's also kind of correlated with the idea of social entrepreneurship? Maybe they're the same part of the same tree.
Yeah, I think social entrepreneurship, public entrepreneurship, that and like these are all like loose definitions that I essentially make up or own for myself. To me, the slight difference is that public entrepreneurship often has some degree, in my mind, of interaction with government and regulations, whereas like social entrepreneurship can be fully, um, you know, independent of like the government. But public entrepreneurship really kind of ends up in that like center of like trisector of like the private markets, public government, and then like nonprofits and so forth. And so that's kind of where I see the difference, where social entrepreneurship oftentimes is like a breed of it.
In terms of like your experience with blockchain, was there like a central point in time in which you came across it and a light bulb went off in your head? You're like, I need to work in this industry with this technology. Or was it progressive over time? I know everyone's story is different.
Yeah, you know what's so funny? I listen to people on podcasts and like I feel like there's always this resume point. Like, yeah, I bought my first Bitcoin in 2013. I am not that dude. Like I was on a walk with a friend and I had this take, which now seems like so crazy, where I was like, what is even the difference between all these blockchains? Like why do you need all of them? And then I immediately hated myself for a second. I was like, wow, I am being I'm being like a futter and like a know nothing know it all, like where I literally know nothing about this, but I'm just generating this like very know it all take. And that moment of like self hate moment only, uh, honestly started this company because it made me think like, why am I asking that question in a rhetorical snobby way? Like I need to be asking that question in a curious way. And then that night, I went down the rabbit hole. Like I remember it so clearly. My wife was like, "What are you doing? Like, why aren't we watching like a show right now?" I'm like, "I'm so sorry, but I have to read this white paper right now." And I became obsessed. And I realized like this technology that is used for things that might seem silly at first, like an NFT or a meme coin, whatever it is actually like the opening stages of a financial revolution. And that so much of what I saw in my life as a consultant or as a product manager building finance products is just almost instantly made better with the smart contract. And there's so many aspects of it that are important, but I just knew right then that like I was playing with something, doing silly things that was going to change the world, and I could not like do my job well anymore with that thought in my head. And so from then on, I was a lost cause. Like I was for sure going to leave to build something that brings smart contracts to real world use cases. And then that kind of, the kindling was set from my upbringing about energy and like public entrepreneurship. And eventually it just became pretty clear that like the most simple, hard thing, which is plural, was the thing to do.
It's very similar to kind of my first entry point as well, which was the Bitcoin and Ethereum white papers. And for me, it was like the sense of finding the Sea Scrolls for the first time. Like it was like a missing link in my mind to finance that just hadn't been there previously that solved so many problems. And it just clicked for me. And I was like, this is going to be huge. This is going to obviously be very rudimentary at first, like any other technology. But once it gets there in a couple decades, it'll be the backbone that we don't even see in society. Like it has tons of potential.
I think that people in general also don't necessarily understand how terrible the traditional like financial system is. Like we've like accepted it as like, our world. And I think what's been really amazing about Plural, and I'm sure we'll get into this, is getting to show the power of smart contracts to people who live in those traditional financial markets and have them kind of have this aha moment, which is like, this is what the blockchain is? Like, this is what everyone on MSNBC is telling me to be so afraid of? Like, this is actually saving me tons of time. And so yeah, I think that the more products that we as a community bring to traditional financial markets, the more that we can show everyone that like this is magic, and we need to be finding out new tricks to use it with.
And yeah, finance is definitely broken today. I mean, look at what's happened in the last couple of days alone. Obviously this episode, by the time it comes out, it'll probably be a week past, but
Yeah, I mean, we can get into this a little bit, but I think the connectivity of traditional capital markets and how the most accessible assets in traditional capital markets are highly correlated. Because what we've done in traditional capital markets is we've enabled this like permissioned composability, that makes it like a house of cards or dominoes that are always ready to fall, because a lot of the uncorrelated assets we don't make that accessible. So like the stuff that we bring that we bring to market with Plural, they have like 0% correlation with any of the assets that are available. So all the traditional mega infrastructure funds that are investing in solar and other deals today probably didn't have that bad of a week. But like you and I and all the other folks that invest in public equities and crypto are absolutely getting smashed. And part of that is, that all the connected assets are the only available assets. And that it's really, really hard to find uncorrelated investments in traditional capital markets if you're not a mega fund. And so I think it's a really interesting time to be building this company like amid the storm. which is yeah. So we'll see how the next week plays out. But I hope everyone doesn't lose their shorts.
Is that part of why you wanted to start Plural as well? Like, is investing into renewables a much steadier market than investing into the stock market? I mean, the answer is probably obvious, but I imagine there's a benefit there, right?
So I think that's a good question, and like we should just talk about like what renewables are as an asset class. So a lot of times when people think of solar, they think of, oh, there's a guy knocking on my door to try to, put uh, panels on my rooftop, or so forth. But most of the renewable energy that is produced in the U.S. today is not from rooftop solar. It's from these projects, and so a asset manager or a developer will build, acres and acres of solar fields or wind farms. You probably drive by them in the western states, especially. This infrastructure essentially captures the weather, turns it into electricity, and then uses the electric grid to transmit it. And then it's, the miracle happens where we switch our lights or we watch, the latest season of Love Island, and next thing you know, it's working. And so the way that market works is that these are usually investor owned assets. So a fund usually will pay a developer to build and operate this project. That developer is essentially, lives at the, whims of those funds. They don't really have any ownership or opportunity to grow their balance sheet. They're kind of like a slave to the money. And then they generate power, sell it to the grid, and so forth, and life goes on. And most of the time, what this asset class looks like is these projects are very stable and predictable. Like the variability is the weather. And so, which actually is like fairly, predictable on a year by year basis, how much power these things are going to produce. Most of the times they have long-term contracts, which are called power purchasing agreements, which basically are these, in many cases, well over 20-year contracts, which say, whenever I produce energy, you're going to buy it at this price. And so essentially what you've done is like, you've made it almost like a fixed income looking deal, where it's very like the only variability is the weather, and then some off like force majeure events, and then there's all the tax benefits that come with it too, that a lot of investors are more than ever interested in. Most of the conversations I have with people are about tax benefits and the stability of the income off these assets. And so when the market goes berserk, the sun is still shining, and the PPAs are still in place. And so as there's volatility and so forth, like everything on Plural is still kicking off cash, the same as it was a month ago, the same as it was this time last year, and so forth. And so I think what we really see as an opportunity for Plural in general is really the democratization of access to these asset classes, where it doesn't necessarily have to be a fund that has billions of dollars of assets under management that's able to invest in this asset class. It can be you and I, or it can be a family office, or it can be a generalist fund that essentially we can use, this technology that we all are obsessed with, if you're listening to this podcast, to make it possible for people to come into the same deals at the same time with the same access.
So what do some of these renewables look like? Obviously, there's solar, there's wind, but there's other stuff out there too. Like, do you incorporate a bunch of different things in a diverse way into a portfolio essentially, or do you have like very specific subsets, like mainly solar, mainly wind? What does it kind of look like?
Yeah. So let's talk about like the short term, the midterm, and the long term. So right now, Plural is focused essentially on three types of asset classes: solar, which there's some subcategories there. So these solar projects that either sell power to the grid or to a large player like a university. One of our projects is most of the energy is being sold to a university, which is pretty cool. Um, and then the second would be wind, and like kind of the alternative stuff. Wind's a little bit tougher. There's a lot more mechanical moving pieces. There's a lot more. It's a little bit less predictable than the sunshine. But the wind was an asset that we go with on an opportunistic basis. And then the third would be essentially kind of emerging clean tech, and this what's often called like the missing middle of climate finance, where technology is proven to work in the lab and in a small scale project, but there hasn't necessarily been a commercialization method for scaling that out to all other use cases so that it is across the grid. And so one of those technologies actually we consider Bitcoin mining. So Bitcoin mining is a lot of people consider Bitcoin mining to be a huge problem for the electric grid and for sustainability. But if applied correctly, it actually could be one of the larger opportunities in the clean energy transition. And so we finance Bitcoin mines as well in that category. So solar is our bread and butter, and there's a lot of interesting things inside solar. But we also really are expanding to more asset classes as we grow.
What do returns kind of look like for investors in renewables just generally? Is it something that is more of a long-term play, or is there surprise profit, quicker turnarounds? Like I'm curious because I have never really invested in it myself.
Great question. So the return profile of the assets that we look at are they really are a lot like fixed income or an annuity, but much more higher yield and in some cases lower risk than some of the bonds that are out there. Like we have deals live on our platform today that are equity investments in solar projects that will kick off 15% annual cash yield, like starting this year. So there's anyone who invests today will get their first distribution later this year, and that yield will go right into their wallet, right into their bank account. And so when you are able to use the tax credits and the tax benefits effectively that we bundle with these investments, that yield goes up even higher. Like we have some folks that are implementing a really strong tax strategy that will essentially increase their yield to like north of like 25-30% in some cases. So for the average person, you're always going to get the 15% on an average cash yield over the life of the project. For the traditional, for the tax savvy investor, like you can really juice that even higher in the first few years. So that's kind of what the distribution profile looks like. Capital appreciation is pretty limited, to be totally honest with you. Like this is not an asset that is gonna 3x, overnight. And it's not an asset that's gonna solar is not a get rich quick scheme. It is really a like I am looking to build passive income for myself and future generations of my family type of investment. We'll be opening up a secondary market on Plural, so there is a theoretical case where someone who is like bullish on solar or bullish on the asset could buy shares from users on our platform. But for the most part, it's really like a passive income, safe investment that's going to kick off cash every year that the sun shines. So that's how we see it.
Tell me about the secondary market. What is that going to kind of look like?
Yeah, great question. So secondary. So I think that a lot of folks in my shoes, founders of tokenization or private markets platforms, um, have this big vision for secondary trading. I mean, we saw Carta get in trouble for it. I've looked at some other secondary trading platforms for private markets, and they have just unacceptable bid ask spreads in their order book that are never going to be filled. And so we've taken a different approach. We are launching our secondary market later this year, which will be a blind call auction. And so rather than matching orders constantly, we do a monthly auction, which eventually will be an event on Plural. Like it'll be like a log in, see if your orders were filled on a monthly basis, because there's just not daily liquidity. Making these assets digitally transferable is a massive step forward in liquidity. Then like that needs to be given time to like settle in before you go into order books and so forth. That said, what we are also doing is we are exploring ways that we can use what's been successful in DeFi as a way to generate liquidity. And so we have a couple ideas there that we're currently working with our legal team on around automated market making for these, as well as kind of like there's some interesting models, which I probably shouldn't go too far into, around like liquid staking. What the liquid staking tokens have done to take this pressure to make ETH an illiquid asset and still somehow generate ETH liquidity for that is an amazing lesson and case study that we're super interested in, like understanding things like that happen in the DeFi space, to understand if we can, bring some of those ideas into these markets where there's a long tail of assets that often don't see the type of liquidity that a public equity would, to see how we can use those tools there as well.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I actually just recorded and published an episode with Inception LRT and their founder, Joao Simões, and they're focused on creating liquidity through staking and also something called restaking. So being able to, like in real estate, you get a house, you borrow against the house, buy another one, and then there's an endless chain of being able to borrow and reborrow to build out a real estate portfolio. But you can do the same thing with digital assets, and I didn't even know you could do that to create more liquidity. You guys should definitely connect. That might be something very interesting to look at.
Yeah, totally. I think those are, I think those are great ideas, and we're excited to explore that. But I should also say this. There's a lot you can do with smart contracts, but ultimately liquidity is demand. Like, and like I think that sometimes in the crypto space we get obsessed with like the science project, and like we live in the lab, when like really you got to get out in the field and you got to bring assets to market that are worthy of demand. And so I have conviction that as more people enter financial markets, which is clearly happening, like we're seeing the financialization of everything. We're seeing people open, high school kids opening up a Robinhood account. I was looking over I have an intern working for me right now. He's freshman in college. I like was total like lame boss move, looked over his shoulder and he was day trading. And I was like, and I did not criticize him at all. I was like, dude, what's up? Tell me what you're doing. I want to learn about what you're doing and so forth. And I think that what we're going to see is that like this fast money phase of the retail investor is, I really think, going to evolve into like a more like, we're going to see people start doing portfolio theory, like having $1,000 sleeves that they're trying to allocate, private credit into alongside public equities and crypto and so forth. Like we're going to see people get way smarter in financial markets, and we need to have products available for them to invest in. And that's why we're going to build liquidity by bringing good products to market. And we're going to make that liquidity efficient by using what works in DeFi to make it efficient.
And I think what's grown over the years is the accessibility too, being able to see people in the retail market being able to get into these things that has been kind of gatekept for a very long time. So, you're seeing platforms pop up where people can share their strategies and their ideas, and they can experiment at scale a lot faster than it takes maybe a large hedge fund or private equity group to do over time. And you have a huge ecosystem now. It's almost like a social media, social environment for investing that's out there at this point. And you couple that with a technology like blockchain, you have DeFi, tokenization, digital assets. You start to get a very vibrant ecosystem. And I think that's part of what we're seeing right now as well. And it's interesting to see how that has kind of shaped, the markets over the last few years. You go back to like 2021, having people like Roaring Kitty and, GameStop falling out. And for the first time, seeing hedge funds actually, take massive multi-billion dollar losses, all because of, silly, stupid retail trades, but actually being able to build and strategize. That's something that hasn't ever existed before. And, now that's being combated a little bit. And you've seen that over the last couple of days as well, with markets fluctuating very heavily and people jumping in and putting in stops to make sure that the markets don't collapse. A lot of financial tools that being deployed, but we live in a very different time where all these investments are accessible to everyone at this point.
Yeah, well, almost all. Now with plural, that more are. Because yeah, I think that you can look, you can read the tea leaves of capital markets and so forth in a couple ways. I think the way most people read them today is that, oh, people want quick money. I want to invest in a meme coin because I want to get rich next week, or I want to lose $1,000. Like I would rather, I'd bet $1,000 on getting rich next week. Um, which I think is a read, like, and it kind of gets at like some base human emotions. But I think that there might be another read that is potentially interesting here, which is essentially the trade-off that seems to be happening between centralization and coordination, where you have these like centralized entities like a hedge fund or a um, renewables infrastructure fund or whatever it is that or I guess the hedge funds so far the only ones that have experienced this, that are centralized. They have like a few decision makers who think and probably are smarter than most of us, but they're going up against people that are coordinating better than ever and have more coordination technology at their disposal, like social media and and blockchain. Like blockchain is the most amazing coordination syndication technology in the world, and like that's one of the things we bring to our customers all the time. And so I believe more in that trend, that like AI is going to improve knowledge, improves coordination, improved coordination makes, it harder to be a centralized entity. And that ultimately, like where we are trying to go with Plural is to like build a financial coordination software for the clean energy transition, the thing that we need the most coordination for.
Yeah, I was going through the website and I was kind of looking at some of your guys' stuff that you're doing in tech and blockchain and in DeFi. I came across proof of energy production and plans to launch maybe a DePIN based network. Is that something that's also kind of on the table still or coming down the timeline?
Okay, so you've never invested in a solar project before?
I've never personally invested in one, but I know people that have.
Okay, and it's mainly because you hate the environment and are ready. No, I'm just kidding. It's mainly. Well, Why would you say you haven't?
I think it's just a lack of knowledge.
And so I think this is kind of what we're thinking with Plural, is it's a lack of knowledge, it's a lack of access, and it's a lack of trust. So we essentially have three jobs. We have to teach, then we have to break down barriers, and then we have to build trust. And so I think that, you know, blockchain, especially, and we can talk about this too, the permissionless layer of blockchain is critical for trust. Like the fact that, Plural is a permissioned protocol, but the fact that a renewable energy company is now, when they work with me, developing an on-chain reputation for the rate that they pay dividends, like how their projects perform financially, how they deliver to investors, and so forth, is so valuable. And so, like, the first project's going to be the hardest for us and for that developer because they don't have that on-chain reputation yet. And so, what we're excited about with DePIN is not so much a lot of DePIN projects are like token incentives, et cetera, to get me to buy a weather vane or battery, whatever it is. But we don't really think that you could like token incentivize a renewable energy company to build a $50 million solar farm. But we do think that if you can create capital incentives to build that solar farm, pair some tokens in it, and also then connect that solar farm to the blockchain and build an on-chain reputation, not just for its financial performance, but for its underlying energy performance, that would be really valuable. And it would make it possible for you, who doesn't necessarily, know how to access, learn about, or trust a solar asset, and make it possible for you to, build that trust really, really quickly. And so if you think about renewable energy investing today, like whenever I ask that question to people, they say like, well, I haven't invested in a project, but I've invested in like this ETF that's only renewables. And oftentimes they're right. Like there are ETFs out there that have, solar manufacturing and the largest solar developers in the world, et cetera. But if you start to think about the space between you, the investor, and that moment of value, that moment where like, someone turns the light on, the miracle happens. There's a lot of layers. There's the utility, there's the company that is selling power to the utility that has like 4 layers of middle management that they're paying, that is then in a private equity portfolio, that is in a ETF portfolio, all this stuff, to the point that by the time you, the investor, are getting the yields from that moment of value, that magical moment where the lights turn on, like there's a lot of rent seeking. And so we can really, the more trust we build between capital markets and the projects themselves, the easier it is to just pluck those middle folks out of the way. and make it possible for you to invest in your first solar project on Plural, and anyone too. And I think that's what a lot of our like Web 2 competitors who are doing great, like they've proven demand. A lot of like where we differ from them is that we have trust as one of our advantages, and the opportunity to build indisputable trust is one of our advantages, and DePIN just makes that better.
Do you think you guys are building essentially a blueprint for that might allow us to see more energy projects moved on chain, in the near future?
I do think so, and we've partnered with some. There's an amazing company called Daylight Energy. They just raised a nice round from A16Z. Jason, the founder, is a friend, and they're focused on a very different problem in the clean energy transition than us. Focused more on like how can we make it easier for people to install solar and sustainability equipment on their homes. And then once we do that, how can we allow them to trade energy with each other? Super big idea. Super big idea. I love it. And there's been a lot of ideas for like an energy currency over the years. And like it's a big idea that might work. And so we've seen some other projects do similar energy transition style token incentives as well. Where we differ for the most part, and I have a lot of respect for those projects, is we're not trying to like change the business model too much. Like we're just trying to solve like some very simple problems. It's hard for a small to mid market renewable energy company to raise capital. They get overlooked by the infrastructure funds that want to do deals worth $250 million or more. It's hard for the average investor to diversify into uncorrelated assets that are good for the planet. These are problems that like blockchain's kind of an obvious solution for. And so we kind of decided like let's use the simple technology and solve the obvious problems and just build a company that does that. And so I don't know if many other people in the blockchain space would take that approach because you know one of the amazing things about crypto is like the eagerness for business model change and disruption, which is awesome. Um, but yeah, I'm sure people will continue to innovate, especially on. There's a lot to do in the energy market, ranging from commodities to project finance to everything.
So what's needed to invest with you guys with Plural? Do you need to be an accredited investor? Do you need to have a minimum or maximum investment threshold to participate? What are some of the credentials that are needed, or is it open to pretty much anyone, or how does it work?
I'm very proud of Plural. I have the most amazing product team, and we did some awesome tests over the last month with renewable energy experts, and basically the challenge was how quickly can you diligence this project and invest in it. And we had like project finance analysts at like multi-billion-dollar funds looking at our page and going from I have no idea about this project to getting every single one of their diligence questions answered in like under 30 minutes and then an investment in like seconds. And so what we're building with Plural is we're essentially building the easy button for diligencing projects and then investing in those projects for investors. So today that easy button is open to absolutely anyone. You do not have to be. We have no net worth requirements. We have a minimum investment of $500 that was set by our issuer, but anyone can use the easy button, and we're super proud of that. And really the reason why we're called Plural is essentially this belief in pluralism, that multiple groups need to come together to finance the clean energy transition, and that income can't be one of the deciding factors of if you're allowed to invest in a clean energy future. And so we'll always have deals that are available to retail investors. And then we'll do some deals that probably will be accredited only on a case by case basis. Like we really let our issuers decide who they want to work with and why and what marketing campaigns they want. There always will be projects available for anyone with us.
And then do they have to hold those investments for a period of time? Like, is there a lockup period, or can they sell at any point?
As of today, it's an equity investment, so you can sell whenever there's a counterparty, and retail investors can buy after 1 year, but accredited investors and retail investors can both sell within the first year. So there's no lockup period. You can trade whenever you want. And yeah, and we have some capital partners that have actually already indicated that they plan on participating in the secondary market. So we do expect buy orders to be coming in, but we can't guarantee liquidity for anyone on these right now. But we are looking to build products that allow people to borrow against their security tokens on Plural. To hopefully one day we solve the liquid staking problem and are able to build a liquid staking product and so forth.
They want to start investing today. Where would they go? How do they begin?
Yeah, great questions. Plural.xyz. Go to our website, check us out. We're live today. We have an investment available. It's moving fast, which has been awesome. So hopefully there's still shares available by the time this comes out. But I encourage everyone to go check it out. And this is a chance to throw some money into a clean energy future. And we will be launching a number of deals throughout the next few months across various ecosystems. And we're really excited by some of the stuff in our pipeline. I think we'll have a Bitcoin mine that is used to balance the clean energy grid live on Plural later this year. We'll have some more solar deals. And then we have some other kind of interesting new technologies that will be we're hoping to be able to bring to market that could be kind of unique and interesting for folks.
Do you guys have like a roadmap of some of these things coming out down the line where people can keep an eye on it, or do you guys just kind of let people know as they drop?
Yeah, usually we give folks a heads up, like coming soon. So we haven't announced our next one yet. We want to keep as much focus on what's live on the platform today as possible. But what for your listeners, what you can expect from us is to continue to bring assets that we spend a lot of time analyzing and thinking about. So we run all of our assets through our own due diligence process. We have a platform review committee that looks at all the deals, and we take what we do super seriously. And we can't guarantee anything. We can't offer financial advice, but we can do our best to make sure that only good assets come onto Plural. So that's what we'll be doing the rest of this year. And I think especially on these Bitcoin mines, I'm really excited about the Bitcoin mine investments, and we're building I guess I'll just share this. We're building a feature that will allow people to choose between Bitcoin and dollars in terms of their dividend distributions, which will be really cool because what you'll be getting is Bitcoin that is 100% sustainable energy mined. And you can, in a way, like just have like dollar cost average into Bitcoin from your, like in a perpetual flow from your initial investment. And so we're super excited about that. And, people will be able to switch their mix of Bitcoin and USDC based on the price of Bitcoin in the future and so forth. And so we're really excited by what smart contracts can do for our end users and how we can deliver more, frankly, cool experiences through those smart contracts.
If someone wants to connect with you directly as well, where's the best place to go? LinkedIn or social?
Follow me on Twitter at Adam T. Silver. And then I'm also on Farcaster too. Also at Adam T. Silver, I believe. And then you can find me on LinkedIn and also, I always read my inbox, and we're still at the phase where I want anyone to email me. So adam@plural.xyz. Shoot me a note if you're interested and want to chat. I'm happy to talk to any investor of any size. I've actually taken a call with anyone who's ever invested in Plural, which takes a lot of time, but I'm super proud of it. And it's my favorite time of the day is to talk to people that are actually using the platform.
This has been a fantastic episode. Guys, make sure to check out Plural, invest with Plural, invest in clean energy, support the blockchain. Any last thoughts, Adam, that you want to leave with people?
No, this was fun. I feel like I could go for an hour longer. It was really fun to chat and excited to hear from your listeners.
We'll jump on and do it again soon. In the meantime, take care, and thanks again, man.
Awesome. Thank you.